Imagine you are running a hospital, an online store, a financial company. Now think what could happen if your system goes down, your data gets leaked, or someone alters your critical files. That's why the CIA Triad, the foundation of cybersecurity, comes into the picture. So in this video, we'll break it down the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the three pillars that every cybersecurity strategy is built upon. We'll explain in simple terms, connect it with the real world examples, and show you how each part plays a vital role in protecting the digital systems. Now, before we talk about CIA Triad, let's understand what exactly we are protecting. The information technology or information system are the backbone of every organization. The servers, database, and the network and the softwares that help business function every day. But having IT alone doesn't make you secure, right? That's where security comes into the picture. Security is all about making sure that all the systems are running reliably and safely, protecting them from the threats, preventing the data loss, and ensuring business doesn't stop. So, in simple terms, IT keeps your business running and security keeps it running safely. So, now let's talk about the CIA threat, the core of the cybersecurity. So, in cybersecurity, everything that we do, from the encryption to access control, revolves around the three goals: confidentiality, keeping information private; integrity, keeping information accurate; and availability, keeping information accessible. So, these are the three main pillars of security, and together they form what we call the CIA Triad. Now, technically, there are five pillars: confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, and non repudiation. But the first three are so essential that they are studied and implemented as a triad. That's why we call it as a CIA triad. Now think of it like a three-legged stool. If one leg breaks, the whole system becomes unstable. Now let's talk about the first pillar, that is confidentiality. So in simple terms, confidentiality means only the authorized people or the system should access the sensitive information. So it's all about keeping the secrets, the digital ones. Imagine your bank login credentials, your Aadhaar number, your company's financial data. If someone unauthorized can access it or can copy it, your confidentiality is broken. Now, confidentiality is not just a single rule, it has a concept and conditions built around it. Let's continue understanding the key concepts that support confidentiality. First, we have sensitivity. So, when we say data is sensitive, we mean that it has some value and it must be protected because the exposure could cause harm. So, in simple terms, not all data is equal. Some information, if it is leaked, might be inconvenient for you, but some could be catastrophic. For example, a company's cafeteria menu is not sensitive, but a customer's financial record, their medical data, the API keys that you use for your cloud services, those are highly sensitive. So in IT, the data sensitivity help us define the classification levels like public, internal, or confidential, or highly restricted. So this classification then decides how the data is stored, transmitted, or who can access it. Next, we have discretion. Discretion is about how and by whom the access decisions are made. Think of it like giving the power to the data owner so that they can decide who can see or use the data. For instance, a corporate file server that is using the DAC system, discretionary access control, a project manager might share a report only with the specific team by setting up the folder permission. Here, the organization provides the system, but the discretion, the decision making power lies with the data owner. Next, we have criticality. So, criticality defines how important the data or system is to the organization's operations. It's not about the secrecy, it's about the impact that will create if the data is unavailable. For example, the HR payroll system that you use in your organization might not contain any classified information. But think of a case that it went down just before the day of salary. So, it will affect all the employees, hence making it critical for the organizations. In cybersecurity, understanding criticality helps prioritize protection and recovery efforts. So we know what needs to be restored first during an incident or an outrage. Next, we have privacy. Privacy mainly focuses on protecting the personal or personally identifiable information, PII, things that can trace back to an individual. In other words, confidentiality protects data in general, but the privacy protects the people. For example, when a healthcare app stores your medical history, so privacy ensures that it is used for your treatment only, not for advertising the health insurance policy to you. Frameworks like GDPR or HIPAA enforce privacy by limiting how personal data is collected, stored, and shared. So privacy ensures that personal data remains confidential but also handled ethically. Next, we have seclusion. Seclusion means keeping information or a system separate from others to reduce exposure. It's like having a private office where only specific employees can access. So, in an IT environment, seclusion might mean storing sensitive logs or research data in a separate secure network segment or an isolated storage vault. Even internal teams might not have access unless they truly need it. Not just about locking the things, it's about keeping them apart to minimize the risk. Next, we have isolation. So, isolation is closely related to the seclusion. But here in isolation, we mainly focus on preventing the interaction or interface between the system and the process. For example, in virtualization technology, each virtual machine runs in its own isolated environment. Even if one VM gets compromised, it can't directly affect the others. Similarly, the web browsers, it runs in a sandboxing environment. So what it does, it isolates the website so that the malicious code can't reach your local file systems. So isolation ensures that even within the system, one breach doesn't become everybody's problem. Now that we have learned what confidentiality means and what supports it, let's talk about what all the threats are there for the confidentiality. Threats to the confidentiality can be broken down in many ways, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by the accident. Let's look at the most common threats: unauthorized access. This happens when someone gains access to the data without permission, like a hacker exploiting the password or even an insider viewing the file system that they are not supposed to see. For example, if an employee can see the payroll data of other departments, so that's a breach of confidentiality. Next, we have eavesdropping or network sniffing. So when data travels across the network, the attacker might intercept it using the tools like Wireshark or Packet Sniffer. Imagine you have logged into your email ID over a public network and it doesn't have any encryption. Now, anyone who is sitting in that particular network can just run the Wireshark and capture your traffic, where he will be able to see your credentials in plain text format. Next, we have malware and phishing attacks. Phishing emails, as we all know, that uses tricks so that you reveal your credentials to the attacker, or malware that copies the data from your system. These are the direct threats to the confidentiality. Next, we have data leakage through misconfiguration. Sometimes data breaches happen not because of the hacking, but because someone left a cloud bucket or database publicly accessible. For example, a misconfigured security storage service like AWS S3 bucket. These are one of the most common causes of data exposure today. Next, we have social engineering and insider threat. Even the strongest encryption can't help if someone inside your organization willingly or accidentally shares the information. A careless screenshot, a shared password, or a USB copy can break all confidentiality. Now that we know the risk, how do we protect the confidentiality? So essentially, protecting the confidentiality means you are actually protecting the data. Now, data can be in a multiple stages or multiple forms. So let's break it down first. Data at rest, data in motion, and data in use. So what do you mean by data at rest? It refers to the data that is stored on your disk or your database or a device that is not currently being transmitted or processed. For example, the files that you have stored in your hard drives or in cloud storage or in database are the example of data at rest. Now, how do you protect data which is at rest? You can use encryption like AES 256 encryption. You can use access control with user authentication and least privilege policies. You can also use secure backups and store them in an isolated environment. Or you can mask or tokenize the sensitive information like credit card numbers. So even if someone steals the physical device or the database, the data remains unreadable. Next, you have data in motion, data that is being transmitted across the internet within the internal networks or between the system. For example, your emails, API calls, or VPN traffic. Now, how do you protect data in motion? To protect the data in motion, you can use encryptions like SSL TLS or IPsec, avoid plain-text protocols like HTTP or FTP, use VPN for secure remote access, and monitor the network traffic for unusual data transfer. That's why when you see the HTTPS in your browser, that means that your data is encrypted and safe during the transmission. And lastly, we have data in use. This means data currently being processed or displayed. For example, an application loads your data into the memory. It is often the most difficult stage to protect the data. But how do you protect the data? So, in order to protect the data, you can use access control mechanisms or session timeouts, implement screen lock or secure coding practices to avoid memory leaks, use trusted execution environments or secure enclaves to isolate data while it is being processed. To make it simplified, think of it like you are working on a secret document. Even while editing, your system must ensure no one else can peek over your shoulders. Now that we have talked about confidentiality, keeping the information secret and protected, now let's talk about the second pillar of the CIA Triad, that is integrity. So, what do you mean by integrity? Integrity means accuracy, consistency, and trustworthiness of the data throughout its entire life cycle. So, in simple terms, integrity ensures what you see is what is meant to be. Now, you may ask why integrity is so important. Now, let us understand with a real world example. Think you are an airline pilot, and in your cockpit, corrupted weather report shows clear skies when there is actually a thunderstorm outside. That's not just a mistake, it's a disaster waiting to happen. So, maintaining data integrity is critical for decision making, accountability, and operational reliability. So, integrity is not just about preventing the data from being changed, it's about maintaining its trust and reliability throughout its life cycle. So, confidentiality protects who can see the data, while integrity protects whether data can be trusted or not. To truly understand the integrity, let's look at the core principles that define it. Accuracy. Accuracy ensures the data truly represents the real world value it's supposed to. For example, your company's database shows that you have received a 1500 ka payment, but in reality, the gateway only received 15 rupees ka payment. That is something off, right? That means the data accuracy has been compromised. Next, we have truthfulness. Truthfulness is all about being honest in the representation. A system should not manipulate or hide the real condition. For example, if a monitoring dashboard shows that all systems are operational while a server is actually down, the data is false and that violates the data integrity. So, in short, truthfulness builds the trust between the system and its user. Next, we have validity. So, validity ensures the data follows the correct format, logic, and rules. For example, your application should reject invalid data like date as a 31st of February or age as a negative integer. So by enforcing data validation, we stop the bad or illogical data even from entering the system at the first place. Next, we have accountability. See, integrity is not just about the system, it's also about people. So accountability ensures that we know who has changed, what he has changed, and when he has changed. That's why we have the audit logs and the version control systems. They let us trace every changes back to its original source. Responsibility, on the other hand, means the person or the system in charge is actively ensuring accuracy and honesty. For example, a database administrator who regularly verifies the data backup integrity and validates data entry before they go live is demonstrating the responsibility. Accountability and responsibility together create a culture of data ownership and the traceability. Next, we have completeness. Completeness ensures that no critical data is missing. For example, a sales record without the payment details is incomplete, even if the rest looks fine. And comprehensiveness, on the other hand, goes one step further. It ensures data provides the full picture, not the fragments. In cybersecurity investigation, for example, having logs from one server isn't enough. You need a full cross-system view to understand what exactly happened. Now that we have understood the different aspects of integrity, now let us see how the integrity can be compromised. Integrity can be lost in many ways, not just through hacking, but also through mistakes, malwares, or even miscommunication. Now let's look at the main threats that commonly affect the data integrity. Unauthorized data modification. This is when someone changes the data without permission. It could be an attacker altering the file system or even an internal user editing the record that there should not be. For example, a database administrator modifies the audit log to hide their own changes. In that case, the system integrity is gone. Next, we have human error. Sometimes the threat is not malicious, it's accidental. A simple typo in the misconfiguration file, an incorrect formula in the Excel sheet, or deleting the wrong database record can damage the data integrity. These are often hardest to detect because they don't trigger an alarm. They just quietly create the chaos. Next, we have malware and ransomware. Malware, as you know, can modify, encrypt, or corrupt the data. And ransomware, on the other hand, takes all your original data, replaces with the encrypted version so that you cannot use it anymore, effectively destroying the data integrity. Even if you recover the files, you can't be sure that they are same as before. Next, we have the man-in-the-middle attacks. In man-in-the-middle attacks, attacker intercept the communication between the system and alter the data during the transit. For example, if you send a file or transaction request, an attacker could simply modify its content before it reaches to the destination, without either side even realizing it. Next, we have software bugs and synchronization issues. Not all the integrity failures come from the attack. Sometimes it's your own system logic, like a bug that mismatches data across microservices or replication delays that overrides new data with the older copies. Also, insiders with elevated privileges, such as developers or database admins, may intentionally alter the data. For example, just before the audit, the database administrator modifies the log file so that he can hide the unauthorized actions. So that is insider manipulation. This kind of threat is dangerous because it comes from the trusted access. Now, how do you protect the integrity of the data? There is no single tool for integrity. It is achieved through combination of tactical controls, procedures, and discipline. Let's break down the key protection mechanisms that we can use. Hashing and checksums. Hashing ensures that even the smallest change in the data can be detected. For example, if the file's hash value is changed after downloading, that means that file has been modified. You can use tools like SHA-256 or MD5, which helps you to calculate the hash value of the file. This is why when you download an IOC image or a software from the internet, you often see verify checksum option. We can use access control and authentication. Only authorized users should be able to modify the data. You can implement role-based access control or multi-factor authentication to prevent unauthorized changes. Next, we can have audit logs and monitoring system. By keeping detailed audit log of every modification, we know who made the changes, when it was done, and what changes has been done. This ensures accountability and traceability in case of incidents. Next, we have input validation. Applications should verify that input data follows a correct and logical format. For example, an input field like mobile number should reject letters and special characters. Only numbers should be allowed. This prevents data corruption and injection attacks. Anti-malware and integrity monitoring system. You can use tools like file integrity monitoring to detect any unauthorized changes and combine this with anti-malware solution to prevent malicious tampering. And lastly, we have backup and version control. Maintain regular backups and version history. If integrity is compromised, you can still restore them to the original state. Now that we have explored the confidentiality, how we keep the information secret, and integrity, how we ensure data stays accurate and trustworthy, it's time to look at the third pillar of the CIA Triad, that is availability. So what is availability? Availability simply means making sure the data, system, and services are accessible when they are needed, by the right people at the right time. In simple terms, it's about keeping the things running. No matter how secure or accurate your data is, it's useless if you can't access it when you need it. For example, imagine an online banking system that is perfectly secure, but it goes down on the salary day. Customers can log in, you cannot do the transaction, business becomes an halt. So, even though data is still safe and intact, the unavailability of the service makes it practically worthless. That is the essence of availability, ensuring reliability and uptime so that operations never stop. Availability is also the backbone of business continuity. Every second of downtime, whether it is a server crash, power outage, or failed database, can lead to lost revenue, reputation damage, and even security risk. In order to truly understand the availability, we need to look at the different aspects that help maintaining the availability. Reliability means that a system consistently performs its intended function without any failure over the time. In the IT environment, a reliable system is the one that runs smoothly without any frequent crashes or errors. For example, an email server that operates for months without any interruption demonstrates reliability. Organizations often measure this reliability through uptime percentage. Like 99.9% uptime means that 9 hours of downtime in a year. Next, we have resilience. Resilience is about system's ability to recover quickly after a failure. It's not about just staying online, it's about bouncing back fast when something goes wrong. Imagine a DDoS attack hitting your company's website. If the system automatically shifts traffic to the backup server and stays available, that's resilience. Next, we have fault tolerance. Fault tolerance means the system can continue to function even when a part is failed. For example, in a data center, if one hard drive fails, the system automatically switches to the mirrored hard drive using the RAID configuration without affecting the users. Maintainability is all about how easily a system can be updated, repaired, or improved without long downtime. For example, imagine a cloud server where security patches can be applied during the off hours. As a result, user never notice any interruption. Good maintainability reduces the downtime caused by the maintenance task. Next, we have scalability. Scalability ensures that system can handle increased load or demand without breaking down. For example, an e-commerce site during the Black Friday sale, it should automatically allocate more resources to maintain its performance. That's scalability, the ability to grow and shrink based on the demand. And lastly, we have redundancy. Redundancy is all about having a backup component or system ready in case of something goes wrong. For example, organization uses backup power supplies, duplicate network connections, or mirrored servers in different locations. If one data center goes down, another takes over, keeping everything available. It's the ultimate plan B for the system uptime. When you talk about availability, the biggest challenge is not just keeping the system online. It's protecting them from the many threats. Now let's look at the most common threats to the availability. hardware or system failures. Every physical system has a breaking point. For example, if a data center cooling system fails, server can overheat and shut down, taking the business application offline. Next, we have software bugs and misconfigurations. Sometimes availability issue becomes within. A buggy patch or a misconfigured firewall or a faulty database update can instantly break the access to the servers. For example, a small typo in the DNS configuration can make entire website disappear from the internet. So not all the outrages come from the attacks. Some are just human mistakes. Next, we have the DOS attacks. This is one of the most common cyber threats to the availability. So what is a DOS attack? A DOS attack floods the server or a network with fake traffic until legitimate users can't connect. Imagine an e-commerce website during the festive season. Suddenly it hits a millions of fake requests and the server gets crashed. So the goal of the DOS or DDoS attack is not to steal the data, but to disrupt the services, making the service unavailable to anyone. Next, we have power outage and network failures. No matter how advanced your system is, it's still dependent on electricity and connectivity. A regional power outage or an ISP failure brings your entire system down. That's why majority of the organization have their UPS system and a backup generator to keep it running. Events like flood, earthquake, or fires can destroy the physical infrastructure. Imagine you have only one data center, and if that data center gets affected, your entire business go down. That's why we have the data centers in multiple regions, so that even if one region gets affected, the business keeps on running from the another data center. And lastly, we have ransomware and malware attacks. During a ransomware attack, it infects all the system files and makes it unreadable until the ransom is paid. So the ransomware attack targets the data availability directly. So even if you have backups, restoring the systems takes time, causing downtime and loss of productivity. Now that we know what can go wrong, let's look at how we can protect availability. Redundancy and backup systems. The first line of defense is redundancy, having backup for everything that matters. For example, major cloud service providers like AWS, Azure replicates your data across multiple regions to maintain uptime. Next, we have disaster recovery and business continuity. Even with the redundancy, disasters can still happen. That's why we have DR and BC plan. These plans define how quickly and effectively an organization can restore operations after an incident. You need to conduct regular DR drills to ensure everybody knows what to do when things go wrong. To protect the availability, we can also use load balancing. So what the load balancer does is, load balancer distributes the incoming traffic evenly across multiple servers. If one server becomes overloaded or fails, traffic automatically shifts to the healthy servers. This not only improves the performance but also prevents single point of failure. Next, we have patch management and maintenance. An outdated software can become an easy target for an attacker. Regular patching and proactive maintenance helps prevent crashes, vulnerabilities, and service disruptions. DDoS protection and network security. You can use modern systems like firewall, intrusion prevention systems, or anti-DDoS appliances that can detect and block the traffic before it affects the legitimate users. And lastly, we have continuous monitoring and alerts. Consistent system monitoring allows teams to detect anomalies like high CPU uses or unusual network activity before a complete failure happens. Early alert means early action, which reduces the downtime dynamically. So now we have talked about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When we talk about security, we often talk about protecting the data. But what happens when the protection fails? That's where the concept of DAD comes into the picture, which stands for disclosure, alteration, and destruction, the exact opposite of CIA Triad. Now let's break it down. Disclosure means loss of confidentiality. Disclosure happens when an unauthorized individual gains access to the private or sensitive information. For example, a hacker stealing customer credit card numbers from the company database, or an employee accidentally sending the confidential data to the wrong email address. This is exactly opposite of confidentiality. Instead of data being kept secret, it exposed. That's disclosure in action. Next, we have alteration, the loss of integrity. Alteration refers to the unauthorized modification or tampering with data. It might be subtle, like changing the amount in bank transaction, or major, like altering the database of the medical test result. But either way, the data is no longer trustworthy. For example, if a ransomware attack encrypts your file and modifies the logs to hide the tracks, your data integrity has been compromised. If you put it in a simple terms, confidentiality breach exposes the data, but integrity breach changes it. And lastly, we have destruction, the loss of availability. Destruction means data or systems are deleted, damaged, or made inaccessible. It could be due to malware wiping out the files or fire destroying the data center, or even a ransomware attack that locks your critical files and systems. This is the exact opposite of availability, because the data still exists somewhere, but neither you can use it or neither you can access it. For example, a DOS attack that takes down the company's website during the sale, there is a destruction of availability. So in this video, so far we have covered the CIA Triad, the aspects of confidentiality, integrity and availability, the threats and the countermeasures that we can use to protect the confidentiality, integrity and availability. We have also talked about the DAD Triad, the opposite of CIA. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you have liked the video. If you have any thoughts, please comment down below and we will see you in the next one.